There comes a time when emotion ceases to serve as a messenger and instead becomes a master. When the tides of feeling swell too high, they no longer warn us of inner storms. They drown our judgment, paralyze our will, and blind our soul's vision. To kill emotion does not mean to become cold. It means to dethrone chaos and reclaim the throne of inner sovereignty. Here are 5 inner truths that reveal why the mastery of emotion is the birth of power. When we live under the rule of reaction, we are not living at all. We are being lived. Every moment becomes a battlefield where the external world dictates our inner state. A comment, a glance, a delay, or a rejection, each becomes a trigger that instantly pulls us away from our center. This is the tyranny of reaction. It is subtle, silent, and invisible, yet it robs us of everything: peace, clarity, and freedom. We become slaves to stimuli, trapped in an endless loop of emotional responses that have little to do with reality and everything to do with unresolved wounds within. Under this tyranny, the self is fragmented. Our identity becomes a patchwork of emotional outbursts, apology, shame, withdrawal, and compensation. Instead of responding with clarity and purpose, we respond with survival instincts: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. This is not presence. This is not power. This is programming. Every reaction is a clue, not a command. Yet when we confuse the two, we surrender our agency. We stop choosing. We become predictable, controllable, and fragile. To dismantle this tyranny is not to suppress emotion, but to expose its source. Why did this irritate me? Why did that make me anxious? Why does that voice shake me to my core? These questions cut deeper than the event itself. They pierce the veil of ego and point toward the raw, unhealed fabric of the psyche. The goal is not to silence feeling, but to strip it of its authority. It is to observe the reaction and remain still. It is to break the link between stimulus and response. In that space, between what happens and how we choose to respond, we are reborn. That space is where power lives. Emotional tyranny thrives on immediacy. It cannot survive stillness. And so we practice the pause, the breath, the withdrawal into the self, not as an escape, but as a return to the only place from which true action can arise: deep inner stillness. The one who is not ruled by reaction becomes untouchable. Their power is not loud. It is not performative. It is silent, rooted, and terrifying to those who depend on your instability to manipulate you. Kill the reflex. Kill the compulsion. Kill the illusion that every feeling demands a response. When you do, you will find yourself again. Not the self built from fear and approval, but the self that watches the storm pass unmoved. ChatGPT said, "Feelings are not commands to be obeyed. They are messages to be interpreted. Yet so often we mistake their intensity for truth, their presence for authority. When we feel fear, we believe we are in danger. When we feel anger, we believe we are right. When we feel sad, we believe we are broken. But this is the great deception. Feelings are not facts. They are symbols, fragments of the unconscious rising to the surface, asking not for obedience, but for understanding. To be ruled by emotion is to be ruled by ghost, echoes of past experiences, traumas, unmet needs, forgotten memories. A present moment might trigger sorrow, but that sorrow may belong to a wound formed years ago, or to a voice that once silenced us, or to a story we carry without realizing. The feeling is real, but the source is hidden. That is why emotion must be read like a dream. You do not take every image in a dream literally. You ask what it represents. Likewise, when emotion rises, ask, what is this pointing toward? The error begins when we grant emotion a crown it was never meant to wear. We let it sit on the throne and rule our decisions, our relationships, our self-perception. We think I feel unworthy means I am unworthy. We think I feel angry means I must destroy. But emotion, like myth, speaks in symbols, not literal truths. The wise one does not act on every feeling. The wise one listens, decodes, and responds with awareness. This requires patience. It requires the strength to hold emotion without collapsing under it. It requires the ability to observe oneself like a dream interpreter observes a vision, seeking meaning beneath the surface, not fixating on the chaos at the top. Because every emotion contains gold, but only for those who do not worship it. Feelings can guide, but they cannot govern. They can inform, but they must never dictate. If you kneel to every wave that moves through your body, you will never find the shore. But if you learn to read them, if you learn to question them, you will discover that every emotion is a clue left by the soul, asking you to go deeper. The moment you stop bowing to your feelings and start interpreting them, you kill their false power and awaken your true authority. You are not the emotion, you are the one who sees it. That seer is where real strength lives. That seer is who you truly are. Emotional attachment is a silent captor. It disguises itself as love, loyalty, connection, or even purpose. But beneath the surface, it binds the soul in unseen chains. It says, I cannot be without this, or worse, I am nothing without this. Whether it is a person, a memory, a role, or an idea of who we're supposed to be, emotional attachment entangles us in illusions that make our identity dependent on something outside the self. And what is dependent can never be free. The deeper the attachment, the more vulnerable we become. Not vulnerable in the sacred, open-hearted way, but in the dangerous, fragile way, where our sense of self rises and falls based on how another person treats us, how the world responds to us, or how tightly we can cling to what we fear to lose. This is not love. This is survival masquerading as connection. It is the inner child reaching out in desperation, hoping something outside will finally complete what was broken within. Attachment is not about the object of your desire. It is about the emptiness you fear will echo if that object is taken away. It is not the person or thing we're attached to. It is the meaning we've given it, the role it plays in a narrative we refuse to release. That's why emotional attachment resists growth. It doesn't want truth. It wants preservation. It wants to keep the wound alive and avoid the death of who we were, even if who we were is no longer real. This is why so many people cling to what hurts them, because the pain is familiar, and the familiar feels like home. To sever attachment feels like death, because in a way it is. It is the death of the false self, the illusion of completion through others, the identity built around external validation and control. But this death is sacred. It makes space for something far greater, an inner freedom that no one can grant or take away. To kill emotional attachment is not to become indifferent or cold. It is to become whole. It is to stop outsourcing your worth to people who were never meant to carry it. It is to stop defining yourself through the eyes of another. It is to release the exhausting need to hold on and finally stand empty, grounded, and sovereign. When you cut the emotional cords that keep you entangled, you may feel lost at first, but eventually, that emptiness reveals itself to be peace. That silence becomes clarity, that space becomes power, and in that power you realize you were never meant to cling, you were meant to contain. Freedom begins the moment you stop needing something to stay, and start trusting that what leaves was never truly yours. What remains without attachment, that is what is real, that is what you are. ChatGPT said, the shadow is not the enemy, it is not evil, nor something to be destroyed. It is a part of you, just as real, just as ancient as your light. But it is the part you hide, suppress, exile, and disown. It is built from repressed anger, unacknowledged desire, forgotten pain, guilt, envy, fear, and shame. The shadow carries everything the ego cannot accept. And when ignored, it festers, it waits. It grows powerful in the dark. And if left unchecked, it will do what all exiled rulers eventually do. It will try to take back the throne. When the shadow rules, it does not come announcing its name. It speaks through you in ways you don't recognize. It hijacks your reactions. It poisons your relationships. It projects your inner wounds onto others. It masks itself in righteousness, sarcasm, seduction, blame, or martyrdom. You think you're in control, but it's pulling the strings. You lash out, withdraw, chase, sabotage, overcompensate, and later wonder, why did I do that? This is the shadow ruling without your awareness. You cannot destroy what you refuse to face, and you cannot heal what you pretend isn't there. To deny the shadow is to invite it to rule you from behind a mask. The work, then, is not to banish it, but to bring it to light. To sit with it, to listen to its wounds without letting it write your story. You must make the unconscious conscious, or else it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But there is a critical truth. The shadow does not belong on the throne. It must be integrated, not worshipped. It has wisdom, yes. It knows where you've been hurt, what you've suppressed, what you need to reclaim, but it does not have the vision to lead your life. If you let it rule, it will drag you into cycles of self-destruction and call it power. It will confuse intensity for authenticity. It will convince you that burning down what you love is strength, but the shadow does not build, it devours. To lead your life, you must step into conscious sovereignty. That means recognizing when the shadow is speaking and refusing to let it dominate. It means saying, I see you, I hear you, but you are not the king. You bring it close enough to learn from, but not close enough to command. You let it inform your depth, your boundaries, your clarity, but not your vengeance, not your chaos. The one who integrates the shadow becomes whole. The one who lets it rule becomes lost. Wholeness is not about perfection. It's about awareness. It's about knowing which voice is speaking and choosing which one to follow. And when the shadow no longer needs to fight for your attention, it transforms. The rage becomes boundaries. The desire becomes purpose. The fear becomes intuition. The shame becomes compassion. But only if you stay on the throne. Let the shadow walk beside you, but never ahead of you. Rule with your whole self, not just the parts that please others. And never forget, the shadow is powerful, but only the soul is wise, and wisdom must always sit on the throne. To kill emotion is not to live without feeling. It is to live without being ruled. It is to ascend beyond the surface and to look deep into the well of your own psyche. There in the silence, beyond the storm of mood and memory, you will find something that cannot be disturbed. And when others try to provoke you, when life throws its chaos upon you, they will find nothing to push. Nothing to pull, no hook, no lever, no entry, only stillness, only strength, only you.